So a lot of people are asking me, hey, like, what's the big deal with Plagueis? What's going on? What does this mean for the cinematic universe? Well, let me explain. So the first thing that it means is that we actually get to see Plagueis in the cinematic universe, live action in the flesh. Now, granted, there are two sides. There are people who don't like it, and there are people who do like it. The people who do like it, you're either going to be like, you just think that this is the best show ever, we need to fully support it, or you're going to be more in the middle of this. I'll get back to the middle in a second. So the people who don't like it think that we're glad that we get to see Plagueis, it's cool, but not the right show. Like, this isn't, like, they don't agree with the show, there's a lot of problems, think it's lore breaking, and then you're going to throw this for fan service. It's not really appropriate. Now, the people in the middle kind of see both sides of it, and it varies. So with me, my personal opinion, again, you can agree or disagree, but this is how I see it, have kind of always seen it. Without Disney buying Star Wars, we would have never gotten any movies, any shows, it would have just stuck with games. And I've seen very few people try to argue it, but I've been a lifelong Star Wars fan. I've yet to see any evidence, and I've been waiting for you. We want this stuff to be good. Most people want this to be good, but when it's poor writing or like the story doesn't quite make sense, it's not as deep, or you're gonna change things that like could be lore breaking, like it starts to be different. I guess it's interesting because before him, you had all these like Sith lords who were like, you had tons of masters and apprentices, and everyone's killing each other, and then you had getting everybody out and creating the rule of two. And the rule of two, basically, hey, we got one master, one apprentice, one to hold power, and the other to crave it. That's how it goes. And not long afterwards, Tenebris is Plagueis' master. I'm trying not to get too confusing, but hear me out. So Tenebris and Plagueis were actually the ones who started orchestrating the grand plan, which you see in the prequel, seeing like a high Sith Lord, the Republic getting a high-ranking official, running both sides of the war, and then just having complete Sith annihilation for the first time. If you actually read the book, Darth Plagueis by James Luceno, it's super interesting because it's very like scientific, it's very philosophical, you can see the confusion, it's super interesting. There's so much that goes into it. And they're very different Sith Lords. With Tenebris, he's still following the rule too, but he's also having these secret apprentices. Like the Plagueis go tracking down all these secret apprentices, but he doesn't let Tenebris know that he knows. He starts capturing them, his own scientific experiments to test out and see what works. Now back to the Acolyte, seeing Plagueis in the Acolyte means two things. Either could mean that Plagueis is taking Tenebris' place, in a way, and seeking out multiple apprentices either during or before he finds Palpatine. Because once he finds Palpatine, he's kind of putting him into the grand plan. Most of it's kind of already constructed. He's walking around as Hugo Damask, which is why he can walk around freely. Yes, hidden and like still in the shadows of the Sith, but like Plagueis does walk around, and as far as we know, didn't have multiple apprentices like that. He kind of stuck to the rule of two. But he also didn't trust a lot of people because he was very in the grand plan. Like, when he took over Tenebris, he consumed the role of, like, I'm going to run the entire show for the grand plan. And Palpatine, yes, he did something very similar later on, but he didn't have the full plan. He had enough to where he can, like, figure it out, like, oh, I got this. But then he didn't. He didn't expect a rebellion. He didn't expect a lot of these mistakes. And I kind of like it. Yes, like, the show wasn't my favorite. There are definitely a lot of, like, writing issues and inconsistencies. But, like, the show was interesting, to be fair. And at least we got to see him. I keep getting a con with a pro. Yes, I can say a lot of things I don't like about the show. But what is cool is that these shows, like, they're trying. And not well, but, like, you get to have them. Because, again, if this show didn't come out, we would never got to see a live action. Could there be a better way to put them into live action? Of course. There are tons. I'm not trying to make it seem like the diehard fans are crazy. But hear me out. Like, at least we're getting it. It's, like, kind of like the best of both. Like, you know what? We got it. Like, you could do better. Don't ruin it. Because if you butcher it and lore breaking, you're going to make a lot of fans unhappy. Which brings up another part to this, is it lore breaking? I don't necessarily think it's lore breaking. It's kind of like with the twins and Anakin. I didn't think that was lore breaking either. I thought it was really close, like you're really pushing boundaries, but you really have to understand how Anakin was created. And that's what I find myself arguing with the Star Wars fans. Like, hey, if you really get into the book and really get into it, you can see like how Anakin was created through the prophecy. The Force was responding to Plagueis, because Force responded in opposite, because balance doesn't mean one side has to win. So unfortunately for fans, that doesn't mean the Jedi. So the Jedi are on top; they're not actually in balance. And if the Sith are on top, they're not in balance. True, Jedi and Sith, their ideologies and philosophies are not the Forces, which is really interesting. And a lot of Star Wars fans will twist that a little, that information, be like, well, that's where Grey Jedi come in. Well, Grey Jedi don't exist. What you're seeing in these rare Jedi, for example, you see a little bit of Revan, but mainly you see later in Ahsoka Tano, mainly in Qui-Gon Jinn, stuff, people like that. They're seeing this, like, they're following the unifying force, not the cosmic, and it's just like we're not meant to bend the force to our will. They're using it to, like, following the forces, which is why Qui-Gon Jinn never joined the council. He never, like, got really, like, the Jedi got really political, which is what the Acolyte was trying to push, which I did appreciate that, because Jedi are not who they say they are anymore. They used to be. They used to have a hierarchy, and they've had a lot of ups and downs, but, like, being actually keepers of the peace and, like, guardians and all this stuff, like, and actually helping people, you're not doing that anymore, and you're falling into corruption, and that was, the Plate is trying to push that narrative, which is, I didn't think it was, like, woke or, like, a problem. Like, we've been pushing this conversation for a while, and it's a great conversation. It just, a lot of people who watch the Acolyte, like, going into it's not going to enjoy it. Like, so not trying to rant. Ultimately, I am excited. Is it the perfect scenario? Probably not. But is it cool that we got to see him? Absolutely. Please like, follow, subscribe for no more, and may the force be with you always.